when we were talking about the Giants, you mentioned a couple things that out of the questions I had there, it was the one out of one question about the Giants where they were being trained, the Israelites being trained to go fight these things. So when I first kind of got into the whole truth thing, I always heard about copper and giants. Have you ever heard of any connection that, dude, like, can copper kill giants? Like, I always heard Steve Quayle like talking about they encapsulated the bullet of the Kandahar giant, and they. But I looked into trying to make a copper, a fully copper solid sword, but it would be too.
You want to talk about that for a second? This is something I've been making. This is okay. So I'm totally right there with you, Zach. I've been trying to figure out how can we. I just love that you say this. All right, let me show you all the copper that's hanging out around me for this reason. Okay, so this is a 10-ounce nugget, 10-ounce little cube of copper as well. Because like you, man, I'm all about curiosity. I'm like, you know what? Okay, down in the underworld, back when I was going through like these ridiculous rituals, whatever you want to call it, man. When they would when they pour out a drink offering of blood, they were summoning up these creatures, these serpents, all right? And they were obsessed with the consumption of the blood, and blood has a lot of copper in there, right? You got a lot of iron, Well, in certain blood, like we are very deficient in copper. Copper is like one of these things that we have to have in our body in order for us to be able to absorb minerals. You need magnesium and copper, like the two most preeminent things. Well, most people are incredibly deficient of it, but people that are super high and regulated in it, their blood affected these beings. When these people were consuming this blood, and then these other like creatures that were very serpentine like, they would reject certain blood. They would reject it. They would like cast it out and say the offering is impure and all this other stuff. But I have always wondered and speculated, was that toxic to them because they had a higher copper content in their blood? And if that was one of those reasons that like they rejected them. The other speculation that I think is more scripturally based is why they use bronze weaponry. They use bronze weaponry far even into the Iron Age. If you start to go and examine like bronze, for those of you that don't know, is a mixture, a metal alloy of copper and tin. Okay. And so if you just take pure copper, like this is pure copper, 999, pure copper. Okay. But if I forge this out, like I did, I forged this out at a blacksmith shop in, gosh, where was that? In Joplin, Missouri, a really incredible blacksmith out there. And one of my buddy, Patrick Rohrman, who makes these neck knives that I wear all the time. He and I went out there and I told him, hey man, I really want to make something that's called Makume, Mokuma, Makome Gane, Gane. It's like a Japanese style of jewelry that's used for jewelry. It's used for artisans, like trademark kind of craftsmanship, little items and kind of widgets and fidget toys and stuff like that. But it's copper, silver, and gold. Well, what happens is when you mix copper and silver together and try to like do a Damascus style with them, they react to each other. So like copper and silver coins, if you put them in your drinking water or your water bottles and stuff like that, they will do an exchange between the two of them because they're different, right? And they'll attract each other. And so they'll kind of break each other down. So in jewelry, it can look pretty cool because you get this kind of like acid etched look to it. But I was trying to like forge one of those out. And so I was layering in copper and silver, but they melt at very, very different temperatures. And so it's really hard to work with. And I had a heck of a time. But if you melt copper and nickel and silver together, it works a lot better if you start to layer those together. So copper, pure copper, and nickel, which is what is actually in your quarters. If you take United States quarters after 1964, they're basically one of the ideal ratios for copper and nickel to create an alloy. And so I did a bunch of layers of them. We formed a billet out of like stacks and stacks of copper. We heated it up and smashed it down and forged it out. And this is some of the first ones that I made. This one doesn't look as Damascus. You can see a little bit of it, I think, on the the edge there. You can see how I was doing that there. But this was like, so I've got a bunch of these little billets and stuff that I haven't finished forming out into some blades because, dude, I'm just like you. I want to run out there and do experiments and cutting into these things because I do believe there's a toxic effect. When David fought Goliath, y'all, he had said that he had nothing but a staff in his hand. Okay. He killed Goliath he didn't kill him with the stone. He killed him with his own sword. And there was this principle that's required in dealing with these other beings, that you dismember them. You cut their heads off. You keep their heads separate from their bodies, because this word Rephaim, which is like a class of these beings, these mixtures between angels and man, that are called Rephaim and Nephilim, okay? And the Rephaim are like kind of that first generation, like the purer bloods of it. And then as they kind of like, there's this like degradation of the bloodline purity as they went on, because there was less angel DNA and more human DNA. And over time, some of the healing benefits that came with that, their ability to like regenerate their bodies. This is kind of when you start to dig open the word Rephaim and Rapha, there's this aspect of like the ability to heal themselves that's contained in there. And so this is why you'll see in these myths and these legends all about separating with vampires and werewolves and a lot of these things, that you separate their bodies, you tear their bodies apart, and you burn them for a reason, because they can heal themselves. And so this is why people used to drive stakes through the heads of vampires or people that were suspected of being Grigori. They would do this for a reason, because they have this ability to kind of come back from the dead. So one of the benefits that you'll find in like a lot of the legends about how people fought giants here, because this was the land of giants here in the Americas, and the way that they used it was copper tools. The copper trade in the Americas was preeminent as some of the greatest things that they had access to. The copper mines in Michigan in particular. Arizona has another the largest deposits of copper in all of the entire world, basically, are outside of Tucson, Arizona. It's unbelievable how much copper is there. But the purest forms of copper come right up there in northern Michigan, and they mine that stuff, and they find that exact variety of copper all over the Americas. I'm talking Central America, South America, coming from there. So there's this huge trade network for copper tools, and those copper arrows and stuff like that are the main predominant tool that was being used in hunting down the giants. A lot of them were red-haired giants that were being fought by the Indians because they were cannibalistic cult. That was like their big issue, y'all. Is they like to eat people. They're like, consumption of blood is their essential lust that these beings have, and you got to deal with that. So dude, I am on a quest to try to make my own copper tools, and we got to go experiment with it. Bronze is a way better version because it's harder and it's tougher. The edge lasts longer. It doesn't bend as much. Like this stuff I can bend with my fingers. And so you have to harden it, and that's where tin is really good for hardening it up. And but I'm all about trying to do that kind of stuff, man. That's why I love blades.